Whenever you're ready, please.
Okay, it is 6 o'clock on the dot, and I will call this meeting of the Town of Luneburg Committee of the Whole to order. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I'd look to a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Ernst, seconded by Councillor Bertels. Are there any additions or deletions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next up is the April 20th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting minute approval. I'd look for a motion to approve those minutes as circulated, moved by Councillor Halverson, seconded by Councillor Sanford. Any errors or omissions to note? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. All right, we have a public presentation tonight. We are fortunate to have with us former Mayor Rachel Bailey, the newly minted president of the Luneburg Academy Foundation, and she is here to present to us regarding a operating request they are making of the town. We will have 10 minutes for her to present and then 5 minutes of questions. So I've got 6:02, so we'll go from 6:02 to 6:12. Rachel, whenever you'd like to begin.
Thank you very much, Mayor Risser. And I guess as it's been alluded to, this is a very familiar setting to me, but a very quite different perspective. So thank you very much for taking the time, all of you, to hear me out in my new role as president of the Luneburg Academy Foundation. So after 12 years of occupying a seat on council, it does feel very unusual for me to be in this position, but I am very pleased to be representing the foundation. It's an organization I worked very closely with when serving on council, and recognizing the potential that organization holds. I was enticed to join the board at the beginning of this year, back in January. And as the mayor mentioned, I was newly minted. I've been holding this position as president just since April 12th, which was the date of our AGM. And I think you all had the pleasure of meeting other members of our board when a presentation was made back at the beginning of the year, probably I think before I was actually on the board. The past president was is Melanie Comstock. Graham Eisenhower is the treasurer, and he co-signed the letter of request with me. Naomi Chewers is newly minted as well as the secretary of the board. And the rest of the board consists of Tom Hayes, Alan Richards, Roxy Smith, and Jane Ritzie-Moore. And of course, we're pleased to have Councillor Stephen Ernst as a member of our board as well. And he's been doing his duty. We met as recently as yesterday. The board had a special meeting. So we have been working hard in recent weeks. So I just want to, I guess, maybe again state the obvious, but I think it's worth mentioning that having been in your position for over a decade, I really do understand the challenges of setting a budget and making those tough decisions that need to be made to do the best that you can do with the limited resources that you have. I know it's not easy. And as a councillor and a mayor for all those years, I also really appreciate the important role of municipal government. So municipal government is first and foremost about building community, and building community both figuratively and literally was the goal of Project Luneburg. And that's, of course, the comprehensive community plan, which you have all fully embraced as the new council. So I'd like to quote from the introduction, take a quote from what is contained in the introduction to the CCP. And that is that this plan is rooted in community, and its implementation will continue to be a shared effort among citizens and partnerships. So Project Luneburg emphasized that a town council and its staff can't build a community on its own. It's council's role to lay the foundation, to lead the discussion, set some ground rules, to coordinate and facilitate, so people, citizens, organizations, businesses, and organizations will be inspired and empowered to build the community that we all want to have. And a further reference to CCP because of another thing that it contains, and that's reference to capacity building, which it notes as the first thing that's to be used in the prioritization process that it has set out for your adoption when you adopted the plan. So, and I make those references because this ask of the foundation really is for a partnership investment. It's truly an opportunity to both capacity build and community build. And that's why I think it's very important that it get back into the budget as a serious concern of council and something that you look upon favorably. So I hope I don't need to sell you on the value of the Luneburg Academy. The investment in this National Historic Site has turned what was an abandoned school into a community cultural center, which is contributing now very directly to both the quality of life of the citizens of the community, but also to the economy of the town and the broader region. And since its inception decades ago, long before I was involved, but there are still a few members that were involved way back then, some 40 years ago, the foundation's goal has been to care for and preserve the Luneburg Academy, the beautiful, iconic building. So the foundation actually embodies the community's commitment to the future of the Academy. And so we're asking that you continue your work with us to continue to build our capacity as a caretaker and a champion of this community asset. And I know, I fully understand and appreciate that you have many other responsibilities and many other things calling for your attention and your limited tax dollars. But that is actually precisely why I think it's important that you build the capacity through this continuing partnership with the Academy Foundation right now. I guess I put in a note, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a community organization of eager volunteers for every asset that the town had, so that you could share the responsibility of managing all of those assets. So this really is, I think, a unique opportunity. So I haven't referenced the letter, which is there before you. I hope you've had the time and taken some time to look over it. But I do want to note the numbers that it contains because I think, or highlight those because I think they're very significant. So all of the investments that the foundation has made over the past 5 years, which are noted in the letter, add up to just under $1 million. So there have been investments in the foundation by the town over the past number of years, and they've been investments in towards human resource, professional expertise, guidance in the form of a staff or contracted staff, human resource, but that has resulted in, as you can see, very significant return on those dollars towards the Academy. But that's all been done working in partnership with the town as well. So the foundation's potential to grow and to grow support for the Academy is huge. It's really significant, but the potential can only be realized if it's done in partnership with the town. So we really do need to continue to work together. So we're asking for that, an investment again of $30,000 as the foundation works over the next year to complete the Heritage Classroom, which is a significant investment and an opportunity again to leverage support for the building over time. and also to complete our current capital campaign, which got very rudely interrupted by the pandemic, as so many other things have. And particularly and very significantly as well, and Councillor Ernst has been a part of this, to work on redefining our role and establishing our long-term operating plan, which has to be done in collaboration with the town council and staff. So we're looking at, we met just yesterday, we've committed to hiring an interim executive director to guide us through that process. And the funds, the investment in the town would be to that end, to helping us get there, the capacity build. So I guess just an appeal here. The appeal is that the Academy has the potential truly to take care of itself eventually, to be truly sustaining, and your current operating budget speaks to that. The revenues for the Academy on the operating side are around the $200,000 mark, and the anticipated expenditures are around that same dollar figure. So we really just need to work together so that the Academy and the town can together make the Luneburg Academy sustainable. And so that's the the passion behind the plea today, and the larger vision. I'm very happy to answer any questions you might have specific to the request we're making. So thanks very much. I hope I gave myself some time.
You were right on the mark, which is great. And let me take this opportunity to thank the foundation on behalf of council and the town for everything you noted in your presentation. I think it's safe to say that without the foundation and its assistance and partnership, the Academy would certainly not be in the shape that it's in today. So with that, I will open it up for 5 minutes of questions from councillors, if there are any.
Fire away. I'm new in the position, but pretty familiar with the subject matter. Yes, thanks. Yes.
Deputy Mayor Mosier.
Well, I have to give you a question, Rachel. Geez. Well, I mean, again, as you know, like I've been very supportive of making the Academy a live working building again. But one of our our goals again was to have the foundation take more of a solid role in the operation of the building. So is there anything there that you can kind of give us some indication that we're getting close to that goal milestone as well?
Well, thanks for that question, because I certainly was very involved in that business plan and that goal setting. I think what has to be realized at this point is that was very much a goal of the town. It was the town's business plan, town's expectation. It was certainly the understanding that the foundation was a group, an organization that had the capability and the potential to assume that role. Right now is the time that we're actually looking at what that new role looks like, and trying to help that group of volunteers understand their potential and set out a path that will get us further to that capability of assuming a greater role. The volunteers, are at the ready and have always had a passion for the building, and the results have been what we've been able to do so far. But we don't have the professional capacity to take us to that next level just yet. And they are, as a group, looking for partnership with the town to continue to help us get there. I don't know if that answered your question completely, but we're on that path. Just can't. It's an assignment. The role that the town had for the foundation was an assignment given to us, not assumed by us as the foundation at this point.
Okay, Councillor Halverson.
Thanks again, Rachel. I appreciate the presentation. Very comprehensive, as always. I just wanted to maybe just clarify, obviously we've all read the briefing here and understand where it's coming from, but I would like to just maybe if you could explain why you're asking for 30,000 from the town when there is, like you said, there's been a capital fundraising project.
So the capital fundraising project has been just that. It's been instituted as funds that will be directed directly to capital needs for the building. So that is what the campaign focus has been. That's what Tom Hayes, as our campaign director, has made the appeal for. That transition of generating funds for operating income or operating monies to work with is somewhat of a newer phenomenon to the foundation. So having to provide for our own professional human resource has not been a reason for appeal at this point. So although we have a healthy bank account and we shared that, we're a safe bet. That was what that was to assure you of, that it's open and available, our finances for your review and scrutiny. But that was not the intended use of those funds at this point. So we have to make that transition. But what's there is earmarked for the building.
And just so I could follow up then, do you anticipate that, you spoke of partnership, do you anticipate that the foundation will be coming back to council next year for a similar contribution? Will this be an annual recurring expense that you'd be looking for?
It's always been and I think Deputy Mayor and hopefully the Mayor as well, in his experience, understood that at the time the goal had always been to reduce the reliance on tax dollars to the greatest extent possible. I think there's potential that there will come a time when there need not be an ask of the town. Whether that's, I'm confident in saying that won't happen next year. I don't have that level of confidence just yet. I'm a little too new in the chair, but that would be the goal, to not have to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just for councillors' benefit, we're slightly over time, but Councillor Stanford, I'll allow you the last question.
Thank you, Mayor Risser. Thank you for the great presentation, Rachel. It's helpful to understand, and I, like you, am new in my position as councillor. So I'm thinking that when you would have been mayor at the point that council made the decision with the previous request to reduce the funds that were given to the Academy in the context of the global pandemic. So what perhaps do you see has changed at this point that we would potentially be in a better position to be able to offer the funds? Any thoughts?
Basically, I would speak to the pure uncertainty that we made that decision as a council in the previous term. That it was no one had any idea what we were dealing with when it came to the pandemic. And so it was out of sheer desperation, maybe panic. We didn't know what we were facing, and so there was the real concern that we wouldn't be able to function. And so the appeal was made to the foundation, it was actually a conversation that preceded that reduction in the amount given to the Academy, and the foundation, fully appreciating the uncertainty of the situation, agreed to that reduction. And I do think that it's a different situation now. And I know that there's no shortage of places to put the money. But I do feel that I believe I'm representing the foundation fairly to say that those individuals do feel that there's still the need for a partnership to the degree that was originally intended last year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that takes us to time. Thank you for joining us, Rachel, and we'll certainly take this request from the foundation under advisement as we continue and hopefully bring to a conclusion our budget deliberations.
Yeah. Thank you and best of luck in that. I know it's a challenge, so all the best.
Thanks. Okay, that takes us on to business arising from the minutes or unfinished business. So the 2021-22 organizational financial plan and draft budget. And the first item up there is the general capital budget potential cost reduction review. And I will turn the floor over to Ms. Stagley, I presume, to just walk us through any changes that have been made to that since the last meeting.
Certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. I think, Heather, you're one ahead, Heather. 6A1? Yes, great, thank you. So at the last, I guess we're getting a bit of, or I'm hearing an echo. I don't know, Your Worship, if maybe
It's Matt's mic.
it's Matt. Okay. Thank you. So at the last committee of the whole meeting, council asked staff to take the suggestions of that meeting under advisement and come back with a revised capital budget proposal. And so the document you have before you that Heather has on the screen, you can also find it in your agenda, your full agenda package at page 166, has notes regarding the items that we discussed at that last meeting. They're all highlighted in purple. If it is okay with council, I can go down through those and note them, or is that what you'd like, Your Worship? Okay, see a nod for that. So the first item that we had discussed that evening was the Annex Roof and about whether that could be deferred. Staff are currently recommending no deferral because it adds value to the building unless a sale is proceeding in the next 6 to 12 months. So we've left that in there. Then moving down through, I guess I will just go down through the summary, Your Worship, and then if there's questions at the end. So the next item that had been discussed was about the tender package for the town hall exterior restoration. And staff are not recommending to defer this project as there are many capital maintenance items required at the town hall. So we have left that in the budget. Then under the Luneburg Academy, there was a request of council of staff to reach out to the Academy Foundation to see if the capital monies they have may be able to support these two items. So I know a letter went out to the foundation today for those items. Under the Blockhouse Hill development, there was a question about whether that could be funded through a tax rate increase and what would that look like. So that, you know, if we were to do that, there would be a 1.35 cents, which that is missing there, of a residential or commercial tax rate increase, which is equivalent to the RCMP cost increase, which had been discussed at the last meeting. Then we moved down under the sewer or wastewater infrastructure projects. There was a question about if the saltwater intrusion check valves could be funded entirely from transfer tax. So with the adjustments to this, we were able to do that. Then under the discussion for the blower replacements, there was a question about whether the transfer tax could fund that additional balance on that. So that adjustment has been made there. Then there was a question under the compressor overhaul about whether it could be some other funding other than the general capital reserves. But it could not be from transfer tax. And then the only other options would be a deferral, which is not recommended, or of course a tax rate increase could cover those. Can move on to the second page, Heather. Then there was a question about whether the cemetery roads could be deferred, and Public Works said that they could do some additional work in operating and defer that project. There was a question about whether the cemetery backhoe could be deferred. Public Works are not recommending that deferral, as they say that pieces of equipment is used in other than cemetery operations for the Public Works Department. Then we go down to the fire department. And there was a discussion about if the district would share 50% of the cost of the concrete apron replacement. And we have heard back from the district, and they did not approve any funding for that. And so currently how this is presented this evening was for a 50% funding from the district. So, you know, other changes will need to be brought in if council is wanting to move forward with that project. And then to the next project, which we were noting for a deferral, the district has said that they would share a $20,000 towards that project if we wanted to move forward on that one. And then the last few items under the community center arena, that was a correction of a typo, as noted from last meeting, that first item was transfer tax funding. The next item, the skate park, was asked if it could be from transfer tax, but that balance isn't sufficient to cover that. And these are the funding of the $40,000 is from the recreation reserves, which are essentially built up from location fees for filming, et cetera, around town. I do know that Ms. Cunningham is following up with another grant application for that to see if there's an additional source of grant monies for that project. And the last item, which is the floor scrubber, which council actually pre-approved at the meeting last week.
Thank you. Lisa, are there any questions or discussion on the proposed capital items as revised and presented? With the note that we will have to find some resolution on the concrete apron replacement. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Your Worship. Well, just going down as my questions would go down the line here. The first one with regards to the annex roof. So it's kind of wishy-washy in terms of, it says, you know, you recommend not to defer it if we can proceed with the sale within the next 12 months. So what's the likelihood of the sale for the next 6 to 12 months?
So perhaps, Your Worship, I would defer that question to the CAO.
Yeah, well, ultimately it would be up to council's pleasure, and you know, I'll allow the CAO to weigh in from there.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, this is, sorry, getting feedback too. It's largely dependent, Your Worship, on the private members bill that the town is seeking. So at the next sitting of the legislature, assuming the town solicitor has council's blessing to proceed with pursuing that piece of legislation, and that there are no objections to the town claiming ownership over it, it could then be marketed for sale. It would require a survey, or sorry, an appraisal to be done as well too. If the market continues to be healthy as it currently is, there shouldn't be much difficulty in selling the parcel. It's very desirable. And there's been, you know, the repairs, as we know, to the exterior of the building done by the community college. So, I mean, that probably would put us into about a year's time horizon. I would think to comfortably do something like that.
Thank you, Ms. Renton.
Okay, so I'll keep moving down a few more questions. So anyway, I would, based on that, I would still recommend that would be deferred. Okay with the town hall, because it is in bad shape. The other items for the academy, so based on, you know, making the requests, and I would have to assume that the good folks at the foundation would probably do those. I would recommend we probably defer those two capital items of the 15 and the 40. Block Hills Hill, okay. Just quick look here. Thank you on the cemetery roads. I think. I just have in terms of the cemetery backhoe, and I'll just question Public Works to look into if is that the right piece of equipment? I mean, if we're going to have a piece of equipment, is that the right piece? I was thinking one of those little bobcats or something like that. I see a lot of those in a lot of other towns, and they can also help out perhaps with plowing sidewalks in the wintertime and things like that. So I won't argue the fact that you need a piece of equipment, but I would ask you to search if that is indeed the right piece of equipment. So outside of that, I like what you did with the recreation, so all good for me.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have Councillor Sanford followed by Councillor Halverson and then myself.
Thank you. Just looking for clarification in the context of Blockhouse Hill. So help me to understand when we say capital from net revenue equals 1.35 residential and commercial tax rate increase, which is equivalent to the RCMP cost increase in 21-22. I'm not quite understanding all of that. So can you maybe just clarify it for me, please?
Certainly, Councillor Sanford. So at the last meeting, the Deputy Mayor suggested that instead of funding this project from general capital reserves, that perhaps we could fund it with a tax rate increase that would be fairly equivalent to the RCMP increase for this year. And then that would already be built in for some of the RCMP costs for a following year. So in order to do that, in order to generate enough revenue, because you can fund your capital from rating for it from operations if council so wishes, that you would need to increase the tax, both the residential and commercial tax, by 1.35 cents in order to fund that project.
So I must have missed something because I'm not understanding why we had made a change there. So perhaps Deputy Mayor Mosier, you can help me to understand why we changed that from what it was previous.
Well, my rationale is that it's very likely we'll have an increase next year again from, increased services from the RCMP. So this way we're actually just rating it a year early, using it for the Blockhouse Hill project, and then it's already in the bank for next year. So it'll allow us not to have to look at increasing our tax rate next year, because we've done it this year to use it for this project, which is important, and then we'll have it in the bank for next year for potential operating costs, which would come from increased protected services.
Okay, thank you.
Was that it, Councillor Sanford? Okay, Councillor Halverson.
Great, thank you, Your Worship. A couple of quick questions, maybe to the CAO through you. You mentioned there would be some cost for appraisal if we were looking at selling the school annex. I see, we're working at putting that roof in because we want to get a higher value when we sell it. But then you mentioned a number of steps, so we'd have to get an appraisal. Where's the funding coming from for all of those, those pieces to line up before we can actually sell that building?
Well, and that's a question I'm sorry, I'm going to have to throw over to Lisa. There's a way of doing that with the sale of surplus property that, if I may, Lisa, she would be better able to address how that is accounted and financed for. It's part of the sales transaction.
And that is exactly as Ms. Renton said, Councillor Halverson, it's just collected those costs and then it's deducted from the proceeds of sale. And that's why we don't need to have another budget item for that to get ready for the sale. Okay,
I just want to make sure it wasn't coming out of somewhere else. So
sure, certainly.
I had one more concern, really. Thank you for Councillor Sanford for addressing the tax issue. It was on the concrete apron. Having taken the tour over at the fire hall, like we all recognize that it does need to be done. It needs to be done this year. So $110,000 is nothing to sneeze at. I will say I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get some more help from our neighbors on that one, that they decided to approve $20,000 towards a extraction system, but not the apron that actually allows our trucks to get out of the building. but that's their prerogative, of course. And I would ask, you mentioned that we don't have enough income in the transfer tax to undertake 100% of that project. Where else would that funding come from?
Certainly, Councillor Halverson. I mean, your options would be, we could take it from the general capital reserves. We could make cuts to other projects, obviously, and that are funded with the transfer tax and come up with those funds. You know, it's always the option to rate for those extra funds. I mean, you could, I think we're at our maximum borrowing this year for capital projects, but if we were deferring something else that we were borrowing, we could do that as well. So there's really, those are your options at this point, I think.
I would just, before the deputy mayor jumps in there, I would ask, I would assume if there was another project that we could have, you know, put ahead of this one, you would have done that already. So I would anticipate that's probably not going to be an easy decision.
It would be a difficult decision to make, certainly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I have myself on the speakers list next, and then I'll note the deputy mayor and Councillor Sanford. Lisa, if we were to defer the apron, unfortunate though that is, that would leave us with an additional 55,000 for our 50% contribution. So I'm just wondering, what would your recommendation be there? Would it be to defer? And if so, where would you put that money?
Well, I don't know if I could speak to if it could actually be deferred. I think I would be, I don't know if Mr. Bracken was able to join us this evening, or, you know, I know Mr. Mossman is on the call, or Mr. McPherson.
He's online, Lisa. Yeah, I think just as a guest.
Yeah, whether it could proceed or not. As far as funding, I can answer the funding question, but I think as far as operational wise, I think that's suited for someone better than me.
Thank you, Your Worship. Would you like some input?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. The concrete apron, that is definitely in need of replacement. Certainly, like anything, you know, we could patch it, but there is rebar exposed. I would not recommend deferring it. The 110,000 was based on the average of two quotes I got for the repair. One was 150,000 and one was $45,000. So we put in average, which is what we were working with. So I'm hopeful that the project will come in significantly lower than 110, but we wanted to be on the safe side. So we took an average and put that figure in. So that's where the 110 came from. Two local companies that I've reached out to so far. Hopefully if we can use Public Works, to be resourceful and try to save some money there, we certainly will. But I wouldn't recommend deferring it.
Thank you. Then I'm wondering what staff would recommend. First of all, I'll ask two questions. One, have we reached out to the department to see if there's any capacity on their end to contribute to make up for the shortfall?
So perhaps I'll answer that, Your Worship. We haven't reached out to the department about capacity, but I guess as Mr. Bracken was speaking, I was wondering if we did lower the budget to the $55,000 that we have funded there, and then go out for an actual pricing on that, and then determine what we might need for next steps to seek funding from the department, or have another additional conversation with the district at that point.
Does that seem sensible to councillors? Looking for head nods. All right. Seems sensible to me. That direction clear?
Sorry, yes. Yes, we would lower the budget to 55,000 with the entire 55,000 being funded from the transfer tax at this point.
Okay. And then the 5,000 for the compressor overhaul, would you just fund that? How would you suggest funding that? Because I, like you, would not want to defer wastewater treatment issues.
Exactly, Your Worship. And I have not deferred it in the budget. It is currently funded from general capital reserves, and that would be my recommendation, to leave it as that.
Okay, and just given that that's a question that's up in the air, is that acceptable to all councillors? Okay, then I have Councillor Sanford followed by the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Dagley, again, I have a question with regards to the allocation at Blockhouse Hill. If we didn't increase the tax rate, is there somewhere else, did I understand you to say that we would have, or we had funds in the operating budget for that?
Not from the operating budget, Councillor Sanford, but we could take that from the general capital reserve.
Okay.
If you did not want to increase the tax rate.
Thank you very much for the clarification.
Is that something you'd like to propose, Councillor Sanford?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do a quick go around then to see where people are at on that. So on the one hand, it's going to be funded through an increase in the tax rate per the suggestion of the Deputy Mayor. On the other hand, through general capital reserve per the suggestion of Councillor Sanford. So just wondering what folks are thinking. I'll start with Councillor Halverson.
I guess I would ask Lisa if we dove into the general capital reserves for that amount, how would that leave us? How would that leave the reserve?
So that reserve has just about $400,000 balance as of March 31st, 2021, and so it's certainly sufficient to cover that expenditure. And you would hope that doing this is one that would earn us revenue in the future, right?
So would you like to weigh in with a view one way or the other, Councillor Halverson?
I must say I struggle with this one. And on the one hand, it's no one wants to raise taxes, but I also, I see the Deputy Mayor's point about kind of peeling the Band-Aid off. We're going to have to raise it next year anyway, and I don't want to put any extra burden on our townspeople, but when I look at taking that money from the capital revenue, I also look at, what happens if something else comes up this year. If we've got, 400,000 seems like a lot of money, but that's, we've seen what happens with the wastewater plant. So I'm just nervous about that. I don't know if honestly, if I can give an opinion one way or the other. I think I'd look to hear what the consensus is of the rest of the council before I weigh in.
We'll go to Councillor Bertle.
Thanks. I kind of have to agree with Ed on that. I'm two minds. I kind of don't want to increase the tax rate, but I don't want to have to dip into our reserve neither. We kind of look for the future as well. So I'm kind of two minds. I don't know where to vote right now on that one.
Okay, Councillor Duggan.
Yep, I'm in the exact same position as Ed and Jenny. I think that we run the risk of dipping into the general capital and having a need for that come up, and I'm not sure that I'm okay with not having that backup. So,
thank you, Councillor Ernst.
Gonna just echo the others because it's a very difficult one for sure. Definitely to Councillor Halverson's point, I'm 100% in agreement that it's just tricky. However, I do have 100% full faith in staff, and I would really look to whatever the recommendation from them would be.
I have the Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Halverson.
Thanks, Your Worship. Look, I really appreciate what Council Sanford's trying to do. We all want to keep our rate as low as we can, but at some point in time, we have to replenish this. So if we take it from reserves, it's going to have to be replenished at some point in time. And if we use that increase in this year's budget, we have that money in the bank next year to cover, an increasing expense. So I just really think it's a good way to do that, and that way we won't have to have the same discussion next year. It'll be already taken care of. So that's why I promote it. While I have the floor, I want to go back to the pad for the fire hall, and I agree. I think 100% it should be done, but I think we need to have a broader discussion on the district and the way they arbitrarily can finance our capital expenses. So at some opportunity, I think we should have that discussion as a council.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll note that request. Councillor Halverson.
Thank you. I guess what perhaps Ms. Dagley can provide some clarity on the capital reserve. Just maybe explain. If we do get in a situation where if we've dipped into there and that fund is depleted for whatever reason, what do we have options throughout the course of the year to replenish that if we were in a situation where we necessitated it?
So if during the year something drastic happened that you would need to expend the entire capital reserve, I guess you're talking just the general capital reserve, you wouldn't have an opportunity during the year to replenish that. It would be in the following tax year that you would have to either, if you wanted to rate for it to recover it, or if there were other things. So most of this general capital reserve is been built from some recent sales in the last few years of surplus properties that the town has sold, is where the majority of these fundings have come from. I don't know if that's helpful information.
Well, I guess my real point was, if we decide to dip into this and it is, it's depleted through this and, through however many cuts, 1,000 cuts in the next little 6 months, if something big does happen, are we just going to have to go without if some situation arises where we needed it and it's not there? Like, do we have an opportunity to borrow from some capacity?
Oh, certainly. If something catastrophic happened, you would have an opportunity to borrow for it if you didn't have it in the operating reserve and you needed it.
So I kind of feel like a little bit like we're rolling the dice basically on if we're just betting that nothing's going to go wrong, that we're going to need to dip into that fund if we take that, if we go into that for the blockhouse hill. Okay. Thank you,
Councillor Halverson. I would ask, given that it's been raised, Lisa, if you were to make a recommendation to staff between the two options, what would it be?
That is a difficult one, Your Worship. Having capital reserves on hand is always important. This doesn't significantly deplete them, that they're to a level that I would think it was critical. So, I think there is capacity in order to do this project from the general capital reserves. However, to the Deputy Mayor's point as well, that, rating it now so that it's already there and in place for future years, because as we know, the budget never sort of shrinks. There's always things that costs are increasing. So, it really is a 50-50 for me at this point, Your Worship.
Okay, I'm just mindful that if we're going to pass a capital budget tonight or at the next meeting, we'll have to have that resolved. I've noticed your hand, Deputy Mayor, but I did note in the chat that Dennis, the town engineer, wanted to make a few comments, so I'll allow some space for that.
So to me then?
Yes, Dennis.
All right, sure. Thank you very, very much. I just wanted to respond to a couple of comments that Deputy Mayor Mosher had made. Just wanted to give my 2 cents worth on the Annex Roof and potential deferrals there, and just from a technical background, that this is kind of a thing that we're either going to pay now or pay later, kind of thing. It's evident from the ground level about the age of the shingles that are up there, and their evident condition, and the fact that we've had leaks in that roof over the over the past while, the leaks will add to other damages that we're going to have to repair at some point in time prior to sale. So that's the first part. You know, it's going to, it would be the same kind of evaluation if you had a poor roof on your own house, kind of thing. You know, it would be believed that investing in the roof will be able to be compensated with the sale eventually, that you would get that the value back. For certain, if you were going to sell it as is, it would be a detriment, and that they would be looking for compensation. Anybody interested in purchasing the place to re-shingle. And the other aspect of it is that we have this $5,000 in hand from the Nova Scotia Community College that we would like that we have on hand that we can apply to that this year. So that's what I just wanted to add about the Annex Roof. The other topic was about the cemetery backhoe. And the Deputy Mayor, you had mentioned a certain type of machine, and I just can't remember the name of it. The one with the
yeah, like a Bobcat or something like, you know, that's probably the brand name of it is, but you know.
Yeah. So for us on this particular application, Peter Baker and I are currently putting together specs as to what we would ask for in the request for purchase for a replacement vehicle or machine, and we would specify the type of equipment that we need. But definitely not just to replace a Kubota with a Kubota. So we would identify what our needs are, and to see what kind of bids would come in from the various manufacturers. It could be John Deere, it could be Coyote, Kubota, etc. And I believe those Bobcats only have the front end loader mechanism. I don't think that they have the backhoe on the other side. I've seen many of those Bobcats around construction sites. And one of the key things that we do need is the backhoe part for digging. So as I say, I think we would put together specs and for trying to get the right tool for our application. And as I offered before, that we can go with a secondhand kind of a machine as long as it meets our minimum criteria. So
thank you, Dennis. I am going to ask that councillors and staff, as we proceed, try to keep it germane to the specific item that we're discussing at the time. If they want to weigh in, and just note to me if it's something unrelated, and I'll mark it down for future discussions. So just to bring us, I thank Dennis for the comments. Just to bring us back to discussing the $40,000 for Blockhouse Hill and how to fund it. I'd like to close out that loop before we keep going. So I had the Deputy Mayor, I assume it's germane to that, and Councillor Sanford and Councillor Halverson, the same thing. Okay.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just again, like in terms of, I know we capital reserves, they are there for our, you know, for the benefit of an emergency. But we do have a pending emergency, and it's called wastewater treatment. So that's why, you know, I want to keep as much in the bank for that as we can. So that's just my thought of keeping it moving forward in a positive way without overburdening the taxpayer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Sanford.
Just to add to it, I feel that a tax increase at this particular point in time puts a really unnecessary burden on the residents and the businesses during the pandemic. Like, it's been a hard time for people. Their incomes have been impacted by the pandemic, and the businesses, if you look around town, we know our businesses have suffered greatly. So I'm just thinking, is this not an emergency? So to Deputy Mayor Mosier's comment about, it's kind of there, it's an emergency fund. And I'm not saying drain the bank. And we've heard Ms. Dagley say, we can go in, we could use this amount. And again, it's $40,000 in a $400,000 amount. And I know that there are a number of us that have turned our minds to how we can generate operational revenues as we go forward. So instead of looking at the extreme of doom and gloom, we're gonna need an emergency in this next year and so on. I'd like to counterbalance that a bit with thinking that we're putting our heads together. We're going to be a council that works together to work and focus on generating those operational revenues as we go forward. I know there are a number of us that have turned our minds to that. So I'd just like folks to maybe consider some of that as we weigh in on this. Is this not now a good time to actually access that money and not place the burden on tax for residents and businesses? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. I have Councillor Halverson and then Councillor Duggan.
There. Again, thank you for your comments, Councillor Sanford. Kind of actually stole a lot of my thunder there. I do want to say I appreciate what the Deputy Mayor has said, and I agree. I don't really want to get into the capital funding, but capital fund. But I do believe I'm just going to echo what Councillor Sanford said. Basically, that's where I kind of my head has gone to now. I think for this year, taking 40,000 out of the capital reserves probably makes sense. That rather than hitting our taxpayers with 1.5%, we know we have to do it next year, but that's next year. This is this year, and again, for all the reasons Councillor Sanford's just laid out, I think my mind is turned now towards taking it out of the capital reserves.
Okay, I have Councillor Duggan.
I just want to echo exactly what Councillor Sanford and Councillor Halverson have both said. I do not want to see a tax increase this year. I think that, as Councillor Sanford did say, that people are in very difficult positions this year in particular. I mean, we are a year and a half into a pandemic. Job losses and loss of homes are at an all-time high. I just would like to see the money come out of the reserve for now and then look to creative ways to generate revenue moving forward.
Okay.
If I may, Your Worship?
Yep.
I guess I just wanted to note that, if your general capital reserves are used and for this project, which is readying Lock Coast Hill to generate additional revenues from sale of surplus lands, those sales would replenish that reserve. I just wanted to make that note.
All right, so I'm going to test for a decision here. I'm getting the sense that Councillor Sanford's proposal has won the day. I'm looking to council for nodding heads or thumbs up. All right. So can staff take it as sufficiently clear direction that be in the draft funded from capital reserve?
Certainly, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions about the capital budget as presented? All right. Councillor Halverson.
I just wonder if we could revisit the cemetery equipment that the Deputy Mayor and Mr. McPherson spoke about. In a conversation that Dennis and I had, I think it was off microphone actually at the last meeting, he did mention that equipment is used throughout the town. We need a specific small backhoe for other public works projects, where the larger equipment can't navigate in. I guess I'd look to Mr. McPherson just to confirm, what that piece of equipment would be used for.
Yeah. from what I understand, and I haven't been here long enough to see it used every day, but I guess it would be used in any kind of application in which the big tractor can't get in. It could be used in ditching. The work that we're doing over at potentially to Tannery Road. Paul, did you have? Okay, Paul is stating that we can use it for snow removal in tighter spots within town gardens, clearing snow from fire hydrants. Paul, do you have anything else to add?
Nope. Thank you, Dennis. Just the big one Peter always points out is, well, two things. One, we use it to load salt in the wintertime into our trackless, which is pretty handy. We had to borrow when ours broke down, we had to borrow Recreation's tractor. So in order to put salt in the sidewalk plow, it's much handier to load it with the small tractor. And then we use the backhoe in the wintertime to clear snow from the fire hydrants. It's a bit, safer to get in those tight areas around the fire hydrants. And of course, gardening and other snow removal. So it does get used quite a bit for other tasks. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Paul.
Okay, thanks for clearing up, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks.
So I'm getting the sense that we've exhausted conversation on the capital budget. Am I correct in that? So I'm just wondering, Lisa, can you provide us with a rundown? I'm sure you've captured all those directions of the revised direction, then potentially for a recommendation to council.
I certainly can do that, Your Worship. So the changes from what has been presented this evening would be that the Blockhouse Hill project would be funded from general capital reserves. And the other change would be that the fire hall concrete apron project would go ahead, but at a revised budget of $55,000. And that would change the overall revised capital budget to $1,399,000. And I could read you a proposed draft motion if you wish, Your Worship.
Please do.
And so it could be moved and seconded for the approval of the 21-22 town capital budget in the amount as noted for approval.
So that would be for recommendation to council. And
that is correct, Your Worship, yes.
Thank you. Is it anyone's pleasure at this stage to move that? Councillor Sanford moving, Councillor Duggan seconding. Is there any discussion or debate on the motion? Councillor Halverson.
Maybe Ms. Daly could provide, what have we actually saved here today with these, I believe we had about a $400,000 nut to crack. How far along the path are we with that?
So that amount you're referring to, Councillor Halverson, unfortunately is in the operating side of the budget. So unfortunately with this discussion, we haven't touched that yet. But there, from the original budget that we were starting from for the capital budget, we did make cuts of just over $800,000 of cuts and deferrals to another year.
Thank you. Yeah, the operating budget is, this was nothing.
Exactly.
Any further discussion on making that, recommending that capital budget proposal to council? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? We'll note that the deputy mayor is opposed. The motion's carried. So that takes us on to, that was, yeah, as said, that was the easy part. Now we go on to the operating, and Ms. Dagley, if you could walk us through the changes there.
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. So at our last meeting, Staff were asked to propose further operating cost reductions, including some cemetery budget reductions. So we have those for the committee's review this evening. They are found under item 6A2 or at page 168 in your full agenda package. And Heather has it up there on the screen for you. So at the first half of the page, or first 3/4 of the page, were included in our last discussion. So I guess, Heather, if you can just move down where we have the updates for May 4th. So, no, a little too far, Heather. Right there, thanks. So the conversation was, were there any additional operating budget cuts that could be made that would not impact services? So if you turn to page 3 of this section, it's under Schedule 1. There is a summary of various cuts that could be made to come up with an additional $30,000 worth of budget reductions. I don't know if council wants me to work through each one of those, your worship, or if maybe we just stop and see if there's any questions on those particular new items, those new reduction proposals.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just at this stage, I think it's best to keep it to questions about anything that's being proposed. I know we've all had time to review it. Are there any questions? Councillor Halverson.
Always up to me. I don't know. Anyway, always on me. Just looking at that snow and ice control, we saw that we had that reserve of 50K on hand. And how is that being applied?
So in various years when the snow removal budget was less than what had been put in the budget, we transferred funds to the reserve for in case of particularly heavy winters, you know, like if we had a white wand event or a very, very heavy winter snowfall. So we have a reserve built up of $50,000 in there. And then how we determine our budgets for snow removal was we actually work at over 7-year averages and look at those things. But if we took a finer look and just sort of looked at the last 3 years experience, we just thought we could shave a little bit, knowing that we have our full reserve built up. If we had, for some reason, had a bad winter and we depleted our reserve, I would not be recommending these things. But I think with the reserve that we have built up, I think we have the flexibility to have these cuts in this year.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sanford.
Just want to start by saying that in the last meeting that we had, I had spoke about not increasing the deed transfer tax, and just that I've had the opportunity to go and look provincially at deed transfer tax amounts by towns and municipalities. And since that point in time, I would be in favor of increasing the deed transfer tax to 1.5% in the hopes of generating the revenue of $80,000 that we're looking at. And I really like the fact that we are looking at allocating that 0.5% in operational budgets as we go forward. So again, it allows us to generate revenue without raising taxes. Again, looking at that, doing the same thing differently. I want to go next down to the tax rate increase for residential and commercial to raise the 30,000. And you know, I'm not going to repeat the comments I made in the capital budget, but the same still applies here. So I would like to not see that tax rate increase. And what I would like to ask, might we consider looking at the economic development officer position that is now gone to a contracted position of $41,000. And what I would like to suggest, could we consider having that deferred until April 1st of 2022, and that it be a continuing full-time position at that particular point in time. And the revenue that would be generated from the deed transfer tax surplus, that 0.5% for a year, would potentially more than cover that particular position at that time. So again, it wouldn't be a cut. We wouldn't lose the service because we don't have the service to begin with, but it would be a position that we would ready ourselves for and start at April 1st of 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Councillor Halverson.
Thanks. I appreciate Councillor Sanford's comments on the transfer tax. Glad to see the ground is shifting beneath your feet. But I don't feel moving that position a year. I really feel that, I know we don't have it now, and I think that's a problem. And I think this was a very positive step when council discussed this, towards that economic recovery, having that one point of contact, that one person to answer all questions and be that conduit through to staff for anyone coming to town wanting to operate. I can't see supporting moving that to next year. I really do feel like it's something that really needs to happen, particularly in a pandemic. And as far as the full-time position, I think I like the idea that it is contract. For all the reasons we talked about last time, the fact that it is a new position, we're trying to feel it out. We want to make sure we get the right person in there, and I think contracting that position out makes more sense than having another full-time staff person. For whatever reason, in case it doesn't work out, or it does, or if we want to alter it, it gives us that flexibility that we wouldn't have with a full-time contract or full-time position. So I appreciate the work that you've put in, Councillor Sanford, but I have to say, I really do. I feel very strongly that the economic development officer really should be effective this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Halverson. And just to clarify, Lisa, the staff proposal as it currently stands is contracted part-time, not contracted full-time.
I would say that original budget had been was included with benefits and supporting costs were $91,000 in the budget. And so the cut is the $41,000. So there remains $50,000 in the budget. And that would be a contracted position, however that could be arranged, whether that was not at a full-time level, or if it started at a certain point in the year that it could be at a full-time level. I guess that the details of that would have to be worked out, Your Worship.
Yeah, fair enough. But if we were to hire immediately for full-time but contract, we'd have to come up with an extra, $20K, give or take.
That would probably be the case, yes, if we were to start a full-time contract tomorrow.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to clear. I tend to agree with Councillor Halverson that I'd like to see us make a start of this year if we can. But I just wanted to clarify for council what the staff proposal was. I have the Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Your Worship. I guess I'm just gonna give my scenario here and my experience of being on council. Especially this council, we've been given a pretty ambitious agenda, which includes Project Luneburg, which I haven't ever had an agenda like that on council before. And I've always advocated to come on strong at the beginning of our mandate and get the resources that we need to fulfill them. So I'm just gonna, this is my warning to you, is that if we clean the cupboards bare now, we won't have, and in order to accomplish our agenda, we need staff and we need resources. And resources, I mean money. We need staff to execute. So if we don't get the right staff in place and we don't have the resources to move forward, Project Luneburg will get lost. And all we'll be doing at the end of our 4-year mandate will be raising our taxes anyway, and we're not going to be giving the public anything. So that's just my, otherwise we're going to go through this line by line, and it gets excruciating. So that's just my 5 cents.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I will echo that I agree with your 5 cents, although we'll try to keep it germane to existing proposals. Any further discussion on the Economic Development Officer as it stands? If not, I'm going to suggest that we shift, because there is significant discussion, or has been around the table, about the tax rate. I'm going to suggest we shift discussion to that more generally if nobody objects. Any objection? All right. right, seeing none. Would anybody like to speak about lay out their position on the tax rate? I know staff did have a last time, Lisa, it was a 3-cent increase, and now you've brought that down to 1. I'll leave it to council to start the discussion. I have an opinion, but I won't weigh in yet as the chair.
Can I just say one
Yeah.
thing about that, your worship? Yes, so at the proposal at the last meeting, yes, it did note a 3-cent with the proposed changes to the cemetery, which are significant service changes with that. So, I mean, we haven't reviewed that in detail if we want to go over that. But it's down to a 1-cent proposal, but I just wanted to note that, you know, there was the proposal this evening from the Academy Foundation, and that has not been considered in those things. So I just wanted to note that, your worship.
Yeah, and that would be roughly a 1 cent.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Who would like the floor? Councillor Halverson.
I just want to confirm then what you're saying there, Lisa. So the ask of the foundation today, that's a 1 cent increase. And then on top of the 1 cent increase we're looking at. So at this point, we're at 2 cents, both residential and commercial going ahead this year is what's the proposal.
If council wished to move forward with the request from the foundation and as outlined here, yes, it would be a 2-cent increase.
Okay, Councillor Sanford, you had a hand raised, but then put down.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to my colleagues for consideration that nobody is talking about depleting our resources and not having the pieces that we have to work with. I think we already have a great map here in front of us. I think we're starting the work of Project Luneburg. I think the intention is to staff positions. And I also think that we're trying not to spend money that we don't have. So by, you know, it's great that the Academy, which is a wonderful, wonderful entity, and the work that the foundation does with the town, it's great. The timing's not good. So when the previous council looked to say, you know, let's not fund the request of the foundation at that particular point in time in the context of the pandemic, that was a decision that was taken at that time. We're still in a pandemic. Things are not good. And I just wanted us to be mindful of that. I'm not saying that we don't want to be progressive. I'm not saying that we don't want to staff positions. And I'm not saying that we don't want to invest in Project Luneburg. I'm saying completely yes, we do. I am asking, does it have to come? Does our spending have to come at this particular point in time on the backs of the residents and the businesses through a tax rate increase? And I think the timing's not right, is what I'm saying. And I feel that we have alternative resources to use in the interim to start the work that we're doing. And then as each year progresses, we'll be in a different place in a different point in time. I really hope this time next year, you know, vaccines will all be out, pandemic will be a distant memory, and we're continuing to move forward. And we'll be making decisions in a different time. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. I have Councillor Ernst.
As much as I agree with you, Councillor Sanford, and I don't want to see a tax increase either, but may I remind everyone that this time last year, we thought this year we would be through the pandemic and we would all be back to normal and everything would be looking good. So I think we also have to be realistic here, and I appreciate Ms. Dagley bringing down the initial 3 cent increase to, well, now 2, but even that does make differences for the taxpayers. And I think it's just a matter of being realistic. I think, again, to Deputy Mayor Moser's point, it's going to have to happen one way or another. And I see us running out of options more and more the more we talk. So that's just my thought in it.
Okay, I have Councillor Halverson next, and then the Deputy Mayor.
Again, to reiterate Councillor Ernst's point, you know, we're living now. We're living in the now. We have to deal with what's in front of us this year. And again, we thought this would be the year we'd be moving ahead. We're not. So we do have to deal with what's in front of us. I really feel like what I'm looking at here, when I look at this budget and the savings have been achieved, I look at the cemetery budget here and what's been done to, change rates and to pull that together and pull some more revenue in from there. I really do feel like staff has done put a tremendous effort into lessen our burden that we have to transfer onto the residents. And I think, unfortunately, I think this is the heavy lifting that we have to do. And, we've got to wear the fact that we're going to have to raise the rate by a couple of cents in order to provide the services the town needs. And in order to the deputy mayor's point, we do have an obligation. We've been asked to move Project Luneburg forward. Things like the economic development position, right, development officer position, we need those in place in order to get the momentum going. We can't wait 2, 3, 4 years, and then our term's up. We do need to put action, get things into action now. So I guess that's my 2 cents. I think the budget work has been done. I think we've, unless, we're going to get in the weeds on this line by line and start looking for $20 and $50 and $100 here. I'm very satisfied with the work staff has done, and I think I'm ready to move forward on the budget. So, thank you.
Okay, I've got the deputy mayor and then Councillor Bertels.
Well, if I would just summarize it, it's never a good time to raise taxes, and no matter when you're in a good economy or a bad one. But we do need a full-time economic development officer, and I do, support it under a contract position. We need something for the academy. It's an opportunity to give them the independence that we're all striving for them to have, and we need something for Project Luneburg initiatives, and I think that comes with a 3-cent tax increase. So that's what it's going to take to make this move forward, in my opinion.
Okay, Councillor Mosier has laid out 3 cents as a proposed tax increase. Councillor I'll just, Councillor Bertels, if you don't mind, if it's unrelated, I'll sort of do a once go round and see what others are feeling before I come to you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, so just looking, I bet I can guess, but just looking for a go round for council on what others' views are. So we'll start with Councillor Duggan.
I still hold the opinion in my position that I don't think this is the year for a tax increase. And that I think that it could put undue hardship on our citizens here in town, and I'm just not comfortable with that at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford.
I agree with Councillor Duggan. I'm not comfortable with the tax increase at this time.
Okay, Councillor Bertels.
Thanks. I actually am, as much as I don't want to increase the taxes, I think maybe a 2% is maybe something we should be looking at.
Okay, Councillor Ernst.
As I said, I'm comfortable with 2 cents. I'm not certain about 3, but I think we have to, as I said, we have to be realistic, and I think that's we're gonna have to look at something.
Councillor Halverson.
Oh, for all the reasons I just stated, we need to get work done. We need to move ahead with this project, and still need to operate a town. It costs money. I think staff's done their work. I don't agree with 3 cents. I think the compromise is 2%, or 2 cents. Sorry. I think that allows us to do what we need to get done without raising more than necessary at this point. So I would be in favor of 2 cents.
Okay, just to weigh in, so I'm not excluding myself, I do agree with the deputy mayor's proposal, but I'm sensing that that's not where everybody is at, so I could live with the 2. So I'm just going to go around because I'm sensing a 4-3 majority there. or a 5-2 potentially. So I'm just going to weigh in. And what about, does 2 seem acceptable to everybody? So let's start again with Councillor Duggan.
I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with that even. I mean, I would like to see a tax. I mean, I understand the reasons behind it and why we would need to do it. I also would like to see it held off for another year, but.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford.
I too would like to see us wait for another year before doing a tax increase of any amount.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bertels, Halverson, and Ernst, I assume you're still okay with 2, as you've noted. And I'll just let the deputy mayor weigh in if 2 is acceptable to him as a compromise.
Well, I just don't want us to become a lame duck council, because what we put off today, we're going to have to recoup tomorrow, and we'll have to recoup it at a larger rate. My very first year in council, I gave a proposal to rate the increase of 4.5 cents, and everybody thought I was crazy. And then later on in the term, you know, we started getting the indicators from the province, and it showed that we were way behind. I wanted to build reserves and ultimately reduce our burden on borrowed capital. And later on, the province, the indicators showed that we were way behind in our reserves. So, and at the end of the term, the rate was up over the proposed rate I'd given anyway. So we got the same amount for nothing. And that's what I'm afraid that we're going down that path now. Spending a little money wisely now is going to pay us off dividends in the end. And that's what I'm trying to push forward here.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I appreciate your intent there. Is anyone's mind changed by that?
I'll move to the 3.
All right, Councillor Bertels. Anybody else? Is this something that councillors are feeling we should defer to the, I really would rather not defer it, because I think we're getting down to the wire now, to Councillor Halverson's point. So I really would like to see some resolution one way or the other. Councillor Halverson.
So the 1%, where I see this 1% coming from is the item in the previous budget that the deputy mayor wanted us to go for. Where was that? I'm lost now at this point, but where, maybe I could ask the deputy mayor, where would that 1% come in?
Well, we still haven't accounted for a full-time economic development officer, for one thing. And that's going to be, you know, in the range of another $20,000 or $30,000. And we haven't accounted, well, we're assuming the other 1 cent I'm assuming is for the Academy Foundation. So, you know, that still puts us in a, you know, it doesn't give us any cushions to ride on. And a lot of Lisa's assumptions are made on increased revenues that aren't guaranteed as well. So, you know, we can find ourselves falling behind here fairly quickly if things don't, you know, this is a very pretty finely tuned budget. So it doesn't give much room for error.
Maybe before, could I ask Ms. Dagley, sorry, I was on the understanding this budget accounted for the economic development position. Was I wrong in that? With a 2% increase?
With a 2 cent, just to be.
Sorry, 2 cents, sorry.
I'd happily take your percent though too. It accounts for $50,000 for economic development officer contract is what this proposed funding includes. I think with the deputy mayor, maybe just so I can summarize maybe what you were suggesting, if you said with a 3 cent tax rate increase, you would be suggesting that everything that we sort of noted here is included. And there would be the 1 cent that we needed to balance, another cent to fund the Academy Foundation request. And then essentially you were suggesting a $30,000 potentially reserve transfer, like it would be an operating surplus that would be transferred at year end if not needed for other operating expenditures, because the budget is so fine and that we're in a pandemic. Is that correct, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, that's correct. And I'm just, you know, I'm just thinking that might be a little tight of a budget for the economic development officer on a full-time basis, full-time salary, right? So that gives us that little cushion through operating that we would have there if we needed it for that position, and again for Project Luneburg initiatives, which I'm sure will arise. Well, I certainly hope they arise. If it doesn't, it's all for naught.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up, Ms. Dagley. With that, I'm going to say I think that position is valuable enough that I'm willing to move to the 3%.
I have Councillor Ernst.
No, just once again, Ed stole my thunder. Hearing all of this now, and certainly in the interest of working towards building a reserve, although I do want to say I am still reluctant with the matters at hand of a pandemic year, et cetera. But yes, I am comfortable with a 3-cent increase.
All right, thank you. And I should note that I'm sure not all of us would agree that nobody likes to increase taxes, particularly in a pandemic year. But to the point, it's not as if we're staying still with, I'm sure maybe Ms. Dagley, you can speak to rising fixed costs and year-over-year assumptions and, that kind of thing, just to note that it's not as if, this is a static process in terms of budgeting.
Certainly, do you want me to summarize a few of those, Your Worship?
Yeah.
I mean, we had, when we began our budgeting process, we had spoke of some of these things. I'm just trying to find the many pieces of paper on my desk, Your Worship, but that we had fixed costs, like mandated costs to us from the province of just under or just over $70,000. Decisions for previous capital projects of additional funding of just over $30,000 that we had to include in this budget. All of the new initiatives that we have included for Project Luneburg, which even with the economic development officer included as $50,000, those are $263,000 that have been added to budget to try to move Project Luneburg initiatives forward. And that is coming off of a budget that we, made cuts of $374,000 when we were at the beginning of the pandemic, and we didn't know if we would get any provincial support and those sort of things. And we did make a 4-cent commercial tax rate reduction last year. So even with this 3-cent increase for them, that their tax rate is still lower than it was previous to the pandemic. So I guess those are my quick summary items for that, Your Worship.
Thank you, Lisa. So I will look just one more time to confirm so the direction for staff is clear, that there is a majority on council supporting a 3-cent tax increase. I will look to thumbs up and head shaking. I think it's 5-2. Okay, and those who are opposed to that, just to confirm. Yeah, so Lisa, I think that direction is sufficiently clear. I'm wondering if it may be best at this stage to, having recognized that, for you to bring a proposal forward to the next meeting so that we can finalize this, noting where the monies would go. I mean, there's going to be no shortage of places where you could put that, but a staff recommendation, so that then at the next meeting we can perhaps recommend the operating budget to council.
Certainly, Your Worship. Yes, I can. We're still working on a draft version for March. We'll update that to incorporate all these things and bring it back with the proposal with a 3-cent tax rate increase for both residential and commercial.
And I'm presuming, sorry, I was presumptive there to say that, is that the will of council, that we leave it there at this stage and have staff come back with a recommended operating budget with that revision in mind? Okay. All right, so presuming that ends the operating budget discussion, we will go to Inter-Municipal Bylaw Enforcement Proposal Update.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just very briefly, the other community remains interested. They've put forward a very sort of tentative, rough outline of what this might look like. They will be following up with additional details. when they confer further with their council and their police commission. So I'm hopeful that we'll have some details forthcoming from them for consideration in an upcoming meeting and a possible intermunicipal contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions, Ms. Renton, at this stage for that? Seeing none, we have no new business. Our next meeting is May 18th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And with no further business before us, I will declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.